Thank you for joining us today. My name is Audrey Lichter, the Executive Director of Chai Mitzvah, the Resource Center for Jewish Engagement. Today's Scholar Circle topic is From Bukhara to Jerusalem, Part 1, Memory, Migration, and Identity, featuring Menashe Chamov. Chai Mitzvah is a national organization now celebrating its 17th year. We are a host of Scholar Circle, a Jewish resource center that focuses on building community through Jewish engagement programs. We have over 20 curricula to choose from, tailored for small group conversation, for teens and adults, lay or professionally led. For more information, please visit our website at chaimitzvah.org. The Scholar Circle program was inspired by Scott Shea, our founder and board president, who authored the best-selling book Conspiracy U, a Case Study, which unpacks anti-Zionist conspiracy theories from the left and the right of the political spectrum. The curriculum was taught in a recorded session by Dr. Andrew Pessin, which is also available on our website. The Scholar Circle program hosts lectures by prominent scholars every 2 weeks on topics related to Israel and the Jewish community, geared towards rabbis, educators, and lay leaders who are charged with explaining the complex issues the Jewish community is facing. To that end, each lecture will have a resource guide that will be sent to you after the lecture. A recording of each lecture will be accessible on our website and shared with you through email. We're excited to continue the Scholar Circle program and need your support to keep it thriving. Scholar Circle has engaged over 4,000 participants since 10/7. Your donation will help us to enable to continue bringing international scholars to you at no charge to share their expertise on the evolving Jewish world in the aftermath of October 7th. Thank you to all who have already contributed. We are grateful to the Laboratory for the Study and Prevention of Global Anti-Semitism at the University of Connecticut for their generous support. For more information about the laboratory, you can contact Professor Dan Wiener, Vice Provost for Global Affairs and Professor of Geography, or Professor Jessica Kuverman, Head of UConn Center for Judaic Studies and Contemporary Jewish Life. To make a donation to Scholar Circle, please visit chaimitzvah.org and click on the gold menu tab, Scholar Circle, and select Support Scholar Circle. This will be included in our follow-up email as well. Thank you in advance for considering supporting this engaging program for all. Today's scholar is Menashe Chamov, who is the founder and CEO of SAMI, Sephardic American Mizrahi Initiative, which is dedicated to fostering the Sephardic and Mizrahi ecosystem on college campuses nationwide. He's an adjunct professor teaching Bukharian Jewish history and culture at Queens College, with roots tracing back to Samarkand, Uzbekistan, where his ancestors lived for over 2,000 years. Recognized for his contributions, he received the Person of the Year Award by the Bukharian Jewish Congress of USA and Canada, New York Jewish Week's 36 Under 36, and the Times Ledger newspaper's Queen's Impact Award. In 2025, Menashe was selected as one of the 15 Jewish professionals for Class 9 of the Wexner Field Fellowship, Premier Leadership Program in partnership with the Jim Joseph Foundation. And that same year, he received the Covenant Pomegranate Prize for Jewish Educators. We welcome questions anytime. Please use the Zoom Q&A box. Menashe, welcome to Scholar Circle.
Thank you very much, Audrey. This is a pleasure to be here and to start this Scholar Circle and presentation. This is our part 1, and there's a follow-up program. You could find it on the website, and I really appreciate to be part of this opportunity. Let me share my screen, and as we discussed before, that if any one of you would like to, if you have any questions, you could go ahead and put them into the chat, and we'll be able to answer those questions as we go. Okay, found it. Okay, so today's topic is From Bukhara to Jerusalem, part 1, and we're going to be focusing on memory, migration, and identity. And And we're going into that direction is because it's important before we delve in and learn anything about Bukharian Jewish community or anything about the response of the Bukharian community or anything about Sephardic or Mizrahi world, it's important to understand where we come from, where we are right now, and the next session will be where we're going after. So here's a few things, the plan of the day. Well, first of all, we're going to talk about why. Why does this matter? What are your burning questions? And if you have those burning questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. How did Jews ended up in Central Asia? Who are Bukharian Jews? Are Bukharian Jews other form of Russian-speaking Jews and where they are in the world today? So we're gonna try to delve in all of these questions in about 35, 40 minutes or so, and then at the end we'll have about 15 minutes to answer any of your questions. So I like to make any of my programs very, very interactive. Whether I'm in on college campus and teaching students in my class, or traveling around the world and presenting it in person, or while I do it online. I like to make it a little bit more interactive. So here's an opportunity for you to spot Menashe. Where do you think Menashe here is on this photo? And the way you could do that is simply by putting your information in the chat. Um, is it the guy in the back, in the middle, in the front, and and we could go in that direction. I don't see any answers, but oh, there you go. We gotta see it. The guy with the gray and white sweater. Oh wow, this one right here. I'm assuming Audrey, right? Okay, let's see. Okay, wow, you are right. That's great. That's great. So a little bit about myself. I was born in a city called Samarkand. It's in Uzbekistan. To kind of give you a more outwardly look, it's in Central Asia. And I started this process because I really wanted to understand where's my family comes from. And you could see over here the dynasty of Chaimov. That's me on the right. Next to it is my father, Abrash Chaimov. Right after him is my grandfather, Menashe Chaimov Elik Boshi. That's who I was named after. The next person is Hanan Chai Elik Boshi, and then Shalom Chai Elik Boshi, and then Chaim Chai Pri. So my main concept here was to figure out where is the last name Chaimov comes from. And that was an opportunity for me to identify and find it, and I was be able to go as far back as Chaim Chai Pri, where Chaim Chai, where Chaimov comes from his name. On the left over here, you see me standing in a Gumbaz synagogue. This is the synagogue where I had my bar mitzvah in Samarkand. It's in Samarkand, and here I'm in 2013 traveling back from America after immigrating to the United States. I'm traveling back and discovering more interesting books. And I was be able to go together with my father. And what I discovered through the process is that my family living in Central Asia, there were merchants, there were rabbis, there were community organizers, and there were teachers. And actually, the word Elik Boshi means Elik means 50 in Uzbek, and Boshi means great or big. So essentially, it's a leadership title that a person possesses as a leader of a 50 Jewish families. And like I said, my main curiosity about my identity started with a simple question. I mean, simple I call it now, but at that time it was pretty intense, where I tried to answer the question of why am I Bukharian if I'm not from Bukhara? I'm from Samarkand. Bukhara is a city in Uzbekistan. Samarkand is a city in Uzbekistan. So why am I called a Bukharian Jew? Why not calling an Uzbekistani Jew or Kazakhstani Jew or any other of those other Jews that we have around the country? And that question actually got me to travel all around the world, from Johannesburg to Cape Town to New York, Vienna, and all the way to Samarkand and be able to present about this very question of why am I Bukharian if I'm not from Bukhara? And also that also got me into the opportunity to create this experience is not only to teach people from the screen, but also to go with them and walk on the footsteps. And we have programs on in Queens where participants be able to come with me and explore for 3 hours a walking tour of a Bukharian Jewish Queens. Um, there's a tour of Bukharian Jewish Quarter in Jerusalem, and also we have a trip that we take people back to Uzbekistan. So I created this holistic way of people really delve into and learn more about where I come from. In 2020, when the COVID hit, I realized that there's a in the Bukharian community there was a big challenge, and I couldn't do all of this stuff that I described to you um, in person anymore. So everybody went remote like everybody else. And I've put together an application and I sent out and put it out there. And I thought that a lot of students who are going to register, they're going to register from Queens, New York. What happened actually, we start getting applications from all around the country. And what I realized is that what Bukharian Jewish high school kids and college kids are experiencing the rest of the Sephardic community experiencing the similar challenge, not particularly about the COVID, but about how they show up in the Jewish spaces all around the United States. And that kind of led me to start this 501(c)(3) organization, the only national Sephardic and Mizrahi college campus organization that focuses on Sephardic life on college campuses. And you could go to our website is semiglobal.org where you'll be able to learn more about it if you're interested, or if you have your students or your kids or grandkids or nephew or nieces who are going to different campuses around the country. So what are your burning questions? And that's something that you should put into the chat and we'll be able to discuss at the end. But one of the things that I want you to leave you with, if you're not going to remember everything that we're going to discuss, one thing that I definitely want you to remember is the most important thing that you can do for your family, maybe the simplest of all, is to develop a strong family narrative. Because knowing your family heritage gives you a tremendous amount of confidence, sense of belonging, and foundation for your identity. So this is a core value that you should understand that you don't have to be Bukharian to start that. And if you're coming from the Ashkenazi background, you also have a history, you also have memory that you be able to put together and be able to document it. Another thing that that drives my work is I believe that learning about Bukharian Jewish history, you consequently learning about Jewish history as a whole. And I will prove it to you through this presentation and as we go for our part 2 session. We're going to really quickly delve into definitions because I think definitions are important, but also when I'm throwing words, I want to make sure that everybody understands. So Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardic Jews, Mizrahi Jews, and Bukharian Jews. The Ashkenazi name usually applies in the Middle Ages to Jews living in Rhine River in northern France and western Germany. And essentially means Ashkenaz means German, Germanic. So therefore, Ashkenaz falls onto the Ashkenazi Jewish community who comes from those geographical region or philosophical understanding of Jewish practice. That would be the Ashkenazi way of life. The second one is Sephardic Jews. So a lot of times with the Sephardic Jews is Jews geographically coming from Iberian Peninsula dating back to Roman period of 1 CE, flourishing as scientists and artists under Islamic rule. But a lot of times we get confused between geography versus a practice as a Sephardic Jew. And a lot of times we believe that if every single Jew who identifies as Sephardic has to come from there geographically, but that's not quite the accurate way of looking at it. Yes, geographically we're talking about Sepharad as Sephardic Jews, but it's the way of practicing, the way of traditions and practicing Jews are associating themselves with uh, with connection to the Jewish law. Mizrahi Jews is also a pretty new term, but it actually, if we're talking about geographically, it connects with the Mizrahi Jews of Middle East, North Africa, West Asia, Central Asia, and Caucasus. And the term Mizrahi literally means Eastern and Eastern Jews. And now finally we are in the Bukharian Jews. Bukharian Jews marked their migration to Central Asia starting from Babylon. We'll talk about that as well. And they over the centuries they lived under the rule of different conquerors and coexisted not always easily with other religions like Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and for the most part with the Islam. And let's delve in. But before we go in, look, this is the map where we're going to be looking at the community. We're talking about these five stands right over here, a little bit part of Afghanistan as well. So how did we ended up in Central Asia? I'm talking about as Bukharian Jews. A little bit of early Jewish history. The Israel was split into two kingdoms: the kingdom of Judea and kingdom of Samaria. The united the first temple was built under the King Solomon. But what happens here is that the northern part of Israel is getting conquered by Assyrian Empire, and that's the term that we know of 10 lost tribes come into play, where the Jewish people are getting spread out all of the Assyrian Empire. Then the Babylon Empire emerges and Nebuchadnezzar conquers Jerusalem and destroys the Second Temple and moves all the Jewish people into Babylonia, of current day of Iraq. At this time, there is an opinion that the first Jewish community, first Jewish settlement in Central Asia happens during that period of time. Then the Persian Empire emerges and it swallows the Babylon Empire and creates this Persian and Babylonic empires. And Persian king at that time, he had a decree where he allowed the Jewish people and other people to go back to their God and to go back to the temples and rebuild those temples and essentially be able to practice to their God and to go back to it. And a small percentage of Jewish people went back and to Israel to rebuild the Israel, and the majority of people, the vast majority of them, continued going eastward on the Silk Road. And my ancestors never went back to rebuild a second temple and continued going eastward and ended up in Central Asia. The first Jewish settlement that was ever discovered was during that period of time, either during the time of Nebuchadnezzar or during the time of the Persian Empire. And it was in Merv, current day of Turkmenistan, and it was in Balkh, current day of Afghanistan. Why would I want to show you this? Is because if you look over here on top, you see the city of Bukhara, and then the city of Samarkand, where I am coming from. So this is where how close these two settlements would have been. We have some proofs here of to show that the Jewish community actually existed there, and there are some excavations and findings that was happening during the Soviet Union, and what they found, there was a stones with the Hebrew writings and inscription on it, and and um, and that was the excavation during the 1954 until 1956, and that gives us a hint that the Jewish presence in those regions existed during that period of time. We also have a mentioning in Talmud about the Jewish community in Marguan, and many historians believe that Marguan is actually the current city of Merv, near Barlam Ali, which is Turkmenistan as well. We also have mentioning from Benjamin of Tudela in the 12th century that he talks about that he is 5 days away from Samarkand, which has a great community that lives about 50,000 Israelites. He didn't call them Bukharian Jews. He didn't call them Ashkenazi Jews. He didn't call them Sephardic Jews. He called them an Israelites. And Rabbi Abadia Nasi is the appointed head amongst them, very wise and rich man. That was his note in his journal. We also have a Joseph Wolf from 1845 mentioning about the Jews of Samarkand, and he says that especially Marv and Samarkand, by the Jews who left Mashhad when community was there forcibly converted into Islam in 1839. So we repeatedly have this connection of the Jewish presence in those area. So let's us go into and learn about who are then the Bukharian Jews. Because before all of that I was just describing you, these were just a Jewish community. There were not Bukharian Jews at that time. There was no these deviations of those communities. But now we have, now we're kind of going into that moment of understanding who are Bukharian Jews. And we talked a little bit about the definition, but I want to offer you a little bit more um, greater definition, which is Bukharian Jews are the ethnic and linguistic group originating mostly in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. The term Bukharian refers to a period before the Russia conquest when the community lived under Emir of Bukhara, and the area used to be called Bukharian Emirate or Bukharian Empire. The after Tsars Russia conquered half of the Central Asia. Bukhara formally became a vassal for Russian Empire in 1868 when the Russian-Bukharian peace treaty was signed that gave Bukharian Jews right to live and trade freely in Russia and within their borders. After the revolution, after the Russian Revolution, the Central Asia region became part of the USSR, also known as Soviet Union, and therefore a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Bukharian Jews also speak Russian." That's where our language comes in between. But before Tsar's Russia, before Soviet Union, Bukharian Jews had its own unique language called Bukharian language. We spoke Bukharian language. We learned in school in Bukharian language. Science, history, and many other topics were taught in Bukharian language. Essentially, Bukharian language is just like Yiddish of German and Hebrew mixed together, or like a Ladino of Spanish and Hebrew brought together for the Spanish-speaking Jews. So Bukharian or like Judeo-Arabic for Jews that lived in Middle East or in Arab lands that be able to speak those language. So Bukharian Jews had its own language. That official scripture of it, it was written in Rashi script, and and uh, and later on transliterated or brought in into different type of letters. And the recent one, Bukharian language, is written in Cyrillic because of the Russian influence. Okay, we're not gonna do this. It's gonna be a little bit harder for us to do this interactive game with so many people on the call. This is usually meant to be for a little bit more smaller group. But basically, these are the stands that we're gonna be looking at where the Bukharian Jewish community comes from. So Kazakhstan is where Bukharian Jewish community had a community. Uzbekistan was one of the biggest hubs. Kyrgyzstan had a small number of it. Turkmenistan was another small number of it. And Mari right here, Marguan, that's the one that we talked about it with the presence and mentioning in Talmud and many other sources we found. And then finally, Tajikistan, that was the second largest hub of the Bukharian Jewish presence in that region. Why Jews of Bukhara or Bukharian Jews? Bukharian Jews was the name that was assigned or given to the members of the community. And that's something that we talked about it many times. And as we learn more about it, we could delve into that. I just want to be very cautious about the time and make sure that we have enough time for questions as well, because I want you to really your answer be answered. So here's just the photos of Bukharian Jewish large families, and you could see different photos of different period and how people dressed. So you could see that some of them dressed more modestly than others. Some had fully head and neck covered, others didn't. And also men are dressed differently. Some had more traditional garments and others had more European garments. And that also difference is all because of their trade that they were doing. Those who are merchants and were more exposed to the outside world and doing more jobs with and trading with other countries like Europe, they would have to dress in that specific manner. And those who were more local and working more local within the Muslim Central Asian Middle Eastern communities, they would dress in that specific matter. So they were a very agile community. Um, not we are a very agile community. I should, include myself into it, that be able to really adapt and was very resilient community that be able to be adaptive and really kind of be part of the of the time that they were living on and not just kind of fall back. There's also Bukharian Jewish quarter, and that's something that we're going to talk about next week, the next session. I'm not going to delve into that as much because that's going to be our conversation for next time. And then I'll introduce a little bit of the food because I know today is the fast day, but hopefully you don't get hungry. I'm getting hungry already, but that will be okay. I'll be okay. But there's something that we called that I call a Silk Road food versus a Bukharian food or a Jewish food. So how can you differentiate one from the other? I always give you a rule of thumb. If you really want to understand other food, whether or not it's Jewish or not, I would say if it's a poor man or poor woman food, like very, very cheap way of making, but it's yummy and tasty, it usually tend to be a Jewish food because Jewish people, I know we have a lot of a lot of people are saying otherwise, but Jewish people, by and large, we were not as affluent as everybody thinks that we are. So we had enough, but we always had like a cholent or chamin. If you look what the way it was structured and the way it was cooked, it's not such a rich ingredients that you have to put in there. Also in the middle of here, you see baksh. Baksh is cilantro, parsley, and rice, and intestines of the animal, right? So instead of using the meat, then you could see. So these are the two osh savo, which is a cholent, and baksh as a really typical Jewish food. But then we have manti, manti. It's a Silk Road food. Chinese people have it. Georgians have it. Um, Persians have it. Every different community have a variation of manti. And then we also have plov. Plov, it's a also it's a in the sense of a Silk Road, but Central Asia has its own variation of plov, and the Jewish community has its own plov as well. And then here on the right there is a dolma, dolma or galuptsi. Some people say stuffed cabbage. So that's also part of a Silk Road food. All of those communities that I mentioned before, and even more, have a similar type of stuffed cabbage in their recipe. And here we see a very traditional Bukharian food. So kulchikani or kulchi is something that we do for Hanukkah. It's essentially a fried dough that is eaten instead of eating sufganiyot, instead of eating the donuts. So that's what something that we were eating, and then over here in the bottom that you see kulchi khani, and then also kulchi roghani is something that we would eat for Purim. So the hamintashins that you have or oznei amans, these are how our hamintashins or oznei amans would look like. And then there's something here that's called chak chak. I always recommend to eat chak chak with friends, many friends. Otherwise, you'll be able to eat all of it. And then make sure you have a tea next to it. This is some just to kind of show you a little bit of a Bukharian weddings and the process of getting married, of how people did the parents came together as a matchmaking process. Then there was the agreement process. Then when everybody agreed, there is like a kanchori, which would mixing of candies and connecting and be able to kind of mix the candies and spread out the information that they're married, that they're engaged. And then there is a shinichori, which is eating sweets, and that's like an engagement party. And then kosh shinon is when the woman's eyebrow gets plucked, and for the first time. That's also was a process there. And then the chuppah, the wedding, um, and getting married. This is my picture over here in 2013 with my wife. We kind of did the similar what what another Bukharian Jews did in 1930. And you could see a custom-made joma, which is Bukharian garment that was created in um, in Bukhara, and my father especially purchased that. And for my wife also, you see, and she was wearing like this head covering, which essentially was like a crown. And that's something that we are when we walking to the wedding to dance. You could see over here they're dancing something that's called a Joma dance, where you're walking as a royalty, and you be able to be part of this beautiful wedding. And
Manisha, I just
yeah,
want to interrupt. We have just a technical issue. The chat doesn't seems to be disabled, so people are putting their questions. If you have more questions in the Q&A, just we have a number of questions in the Q&A, but so the chat is disabled, but use the Q&A for questions. Sorry to interrupt.
sure, sure. Would you be able to read them after once we finish?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so 2 more minutes, and I think we could wrap it up so then I could take your questions. This is a program that I did in person where we did a mimic of a wedding where we brought together people. We found bride and groom, we found their parents, and we were trying to get them married. So you see how happy these people are, and you could see I'm in the middle between two families. Obviously, it's all staged just for the purpose of education, but it was a pretty interesting type of a program, and this type of program that we'd be able to bring to other communities in person. I also brought in sweets from Queens with me all the way to South Africa. It was an interesting project. Here are different ketubot, the contract, the marriage contracts. The reason why I like to show the marriage contracts is because a lot of times when things not going well for the Jewish people, there's certain customs as a Jewish people we do and certain things that we don't. And there are certain essential things that we continue doing it. And I think that's the one of the reasons why we still maintain and be able to stay as Jewish people. So you see 1873, we have 1809, we even have before the war 1928, and after the war 1947 and 1974, 72. So it's interesting to see how certain traditions are continuing existing. This is another thing that I showed you about the Bukharian Jewish language. That's a dictionary that was published specifically for the merchants class. And I'm not going to go delve in more about it, but I want to show you an introduction of the Bukharian language. This is, if you read Hebrew, you'll be able to read it, but you might not be able to understand it. But this is a Bereshit, the first paragraph of the Torah. And on your left, it's Yakomim Kime Donat, Yakomim Man Me Donam. Basically, essentially, is a song of Echad Mi Yodea, or the song of Who Knows One, I Know One. It's a Pesach Seder song that we usually sing at the end. Um, Let me take some questions, and then we could go for the for next one.
All right. Thank you so much. There's so many questions. You really lots of interest. Okay, I'm going to ask a few questions, and then maybe you can combine them. Okay, I'm going to combine a few questions. So, a question about Bukharian Jewish music. What are the origins of the music? A question about who are the Khazars? Are the Bukharian Jews related to the Khazars? Um, there's a question about, is the Bukharian language still used today? And how, and this is an important question, how much work is there around maintaining the identity of the Bukharian Jewish community? And why did the Bukharian Jewish community, what's special about Queens, New York? Is there
So
something?
let's take one question at a time.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
All
Just
right, tell me which one you want me to start with.
go ahead. Just
I'm
keep going.
curious about the unique Bukharian Jewish music. What are the origins? I would want you to expand that, Beth, if you can. Just keep writing on the bottom. What do you mean by that? But Bukharian Jews has its own unique music. Um, but it's also shared with the local community of Central Asia as well. So the music called Shash Maqam, And the difference is that we as a Jewish people will be able to preserve it much better than the Muslim community in Central Asia. And one of the reasons why is because we use the tunes and liturgy in our prayers and in our synagogues. And therefore, when Muslim people, Muslim musicians from Central Asia would arrive to Queens, New York, they'd be able to learn the tunes. They would know the tunes. They might not know the words of it, and that's the song of it. And that's something that you could find out. You could write Shash Macham, and you'd be able to learn that. Um, Related to Khazars, there is the we are not related to Khazars. There's a lot of conversation goes about Khazars. Are we related? Not related. There's some historians points out maybe the Bukharian rabbi actually helped the conversion to Khazars. We don't know how much of that information is accurate or not, but there's always these conversations about Khazars and try to find out. There was just a video about an Ashkenazi Jews apparently part of Khazars and they're not real Jews and they're just they made they created a video to unbug that and kind of say no here's a real story where the Ashkenazi Jews come from. So there's a left and right always kind of using that as a tool to weaponize kind of like of the Jewish identity. But from what we've known is no, there is some speculation into that direction. But no, we know that the Jewish community came to Central Asia after the destruction of the first temple, and they maintained and stayed there. And I also showed some of the slides of different travelers that went through that land, and in Talmud and through the excavations, there's all these facts to prove that the Jewish people were always there, and their presence always was there. They were not called Bukharian at that time, but the presence of Jewish people was always in that area. So I hope I answered that question. In the Bukharian language, is the Bukharian language still alive, primarily spoken by any community? How do Bukharian maintain your identity and a sense of community? Okay, very cool questions. The Bukharian language is still alive, although it's considered to be an endangered language and it's dying out. There is an opportunity to preserve it. The challenge is in America is that there are so many priorities in our community that language is not necessarily the number one that people are excited to fund it or even to kind of worked on it. So the funding becomes a very challenge. There's a people who are interested in doing, for example, some of my projects that I worked on, I've created a website called Ask Bobo .ai, and basically through AI tools we try to preserve the language and train um, the the AI agent that we're building, but also I build it an online dictionary, Bukharian dictionary, uh, and there are some preservation projects also happening in Israel. But yeah, that language is still there, and we're trying to kind of revive it as we can. How Bukharian Jews maintain their identity and sense of community. So the way we do it is by action, is by having projects and events, and we are organized around synagogues and we organize around houses and families, and through all of that we be able to maintain our Jewish identity. When we marry, we tend to marry or try to marry or stay married within the Bukharian community. There is a specific way of doing a Bukharian weddings and Bukharian Yushvo, which is the memorial events. We've really obsessed around memorial events, and we do a lot of those. A person passed away 150 years ago or 200 years ago. We still put together a commemoration event for them, and I think that's a unique way of keeping the story alive and keeping the identity alive. And I'm pushing a lot of it to continue doing that type of a practice. Second question, why they were Bukharian labeled other than the indigenous Israelites of the area? Was this a tactic used by the Emirate time of divided community? I'm gonna go back to this question in a minute. I wonder if American funnel cakes were based upon Khushkalik. It could be. It could be. It could be. Gets a lot of of influence of different community. When I bring Chinese or Korean into my tour, they usually see this and saying, "Oh, my parents used to do that," so they see connection to it as well. So there's a lot of synergy between Asia and Central Asia in there. Are there any patterns of DNA in Bukharian Jews that are similar to other Jewish groups? Um, we do not have an Ashkenazi marker, if that's the question, Robert, that you're asking. Um, but there are some people there are some, you know, scholars who are going into that DNA field and collecting as much data as possible. The challenge is not so many Bukharian Jews are giving out their DNA and doing these type of programs, and those who do, we see the tendency that I've seen so far is that it talks a lot about um, Middle East. So it always has about 98, 95% in Middle East, and then a little bit of Iran, and then a little bit of Central Asia. But usually it focused a lot in around Israel.
How many
Uh,
Bukharian Jews are there? Are there any Bukharian Jews left in the
that's a
UAE?
good question. So the biggest Bukharian Jewish community is in Israel. It's about 150 to 170,000 Bukharian Jews, depending which fundraiser you attend.
Mhm.
Um, there is about 100,000 Bukharian Jews in the United States. So United States is the second largest. 70,000 of them just in Queens, New York. And then we have Bukharian Jews around the third largest is Vienna, Vienna, Austria. Then we also have in London, we have in Moscow. So it's pretty spread out. In Uzbekistan itself, there's about 1,000 Jews right now that's left.
Are they persecuted?
No, no, they have the best time of their lives right now. Their communities, they're very open, and we're actually just building a synagogue, um, a new revamped synagogue with mikvah, with meat processing um, um, building right now there in Samarkand. So it's pretty open for the Jewish people to come and for the Jewish tourists. Please explain why there's a large Bukharian Jewish community in Queens. So the reason why there is in Queens is because there when the establishment when the Bukharian Jews start coming to the United States in New York in particular, they start going to where other people are going. If you notice the pattern, you might also ask Robert why there's so many Uzbeks and Tajiks are in Queens or in Brighton Beach in Brooklyn. So they come where the language is. So they come because there's Bukharian Jews and they speak similar language. Those who speak better Russian than Tajik or Uzbek, they go to Brighton Beach because they're with the Russian Jews over there, with Ashkenazi Russian Jews there. The reason why Bukharian Jews came is because um, there were other Jewish people that lived in Queens at that time. The center, the Bukharian Jewish Community Center that we currently have in Queens, New York, was established in um, in 1963. So we have 1963, the Bukharian Jewish Center established. So anybody who comes after that, they obviously would want to come where their other families are, and that just became very, very popular and big there. Um, are the mountain Jews from Azerbaijan related to the Bukharian Jews or to the Persian Jews? So Persian Jews, Azerbaijani Jews, and Bukharian Jews are part of a one big family of Jewish people who were exiled from the from Israel. I would even go further. The Iraqi Jews, all of that Babylonia, all the way to Persia, all the way to Central Asia, used to be one big Jewish community. The Ashkenazi were part of that whole map as well. So Ashkenazi Jews, I would add here, are the mountain Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Azerbaijani Jews, and Bukhari Jews are all part of the same family. Yes, we all part of the same um, exile, diaspora, but then the because of the wars that was happening, our regions got divided, and therefore, because of that division, we created these terminologies of Jews of Azerbaijan, Bukharian Jews, and the Persian Jews of Iran. So, but we all part of the same community. We all share similar Farsi language. So, Bukharian is a dialect of Farsi. In Azerbaijan, they also speak a dialect of Farsi as well. They have two different type of languages, but the Farsi one is also prominent there. And also Persian Jews, they speak Farsi as well. Does the man wear the embroidery wedding coat on other occasions or loan it out to another groom?
Uh,
Yes, so the joma, the garment that you were talking about referring, it's called joma. So if you come to my Pesach table, everybody, including the guests, they're all sitting in this type of garment. We have a different type of colors and shapes for specific holidays. Obviously, for Pesach, you would want something more comfortable that you wear. So there's a comfortable one. When you do a Hanukkah candles, you wear that as well. When you have a wedding or bar mitzvah, or if you have a circumcision for the baby. So if you go on my page, on the Instagram page, Menashe underscore, Menashe is Manashe underscore, you'll see lots of 1 minute video about Bukharian Jewish history, about the garments that I'm wearing and talking about. And that's how the Bukharian Jewish community traditionally, like those who have operated and do it. Loaning out, yes, there's a whole companies that we have that loan jomas for the wedding, because not a lot of people have 20, 30 joma. They have 5, 6 family one. So if you want to bring, there's companies within the community that rent you, that lend you and rent it to you, so you'll be able to fulfill the mitzvah or fulfill the tradition of wearing a joma at your wedding. Can you tell us again about the language? What were the two and more languages that is based on? So the language is a Farsi based. It has Hebrew in it. Then it evolved as when we lived in many different communities. It has Aramaic in it. Then it has also Tajik, a little bit of Uzbek, and then later on Russian went into it. So, but the base of it is Hebrew and Farsi. That's the first two base, with a little bit of Aramaic that goes into it. That's what the Bukharian Jewish language consists of. Where they still are marriages still arranged. So there is and there is not. The people who marry younger have an opportunity to meet, let's say, on college campuses, and then because family knows families, then they kind of do an arranged marriage, in a sense of like families come and meet together and then they get married. Um, to get arranged in a way that I think traditionally that we know that the bride and groom don't even know about it and the parents are the ones who decide, it doesn't frankly happen. I would say, I don't want to say at all, but it doesn't really happen as much. Um, but people usually know each other. It's not like the way it was back in Uzbekistan, where parents are just kind of like arranged a marriage decision. But even though the Jewish community always, women always had more rights than I would say the Muslim woman at that time, where she always could say no. Where in some Muslim circles, like if there's an arranged marriage, you gotta marry. And that's how it was.
could I
Yeah.
ask you, Manesha, could you go back a little bit, talk about the dynamic between the Bukharian Jewish communities and the Islamic? Was there a persecution during that time? Were they, because we've heard about the status of Jews in the Islamic world were not always equal. What was the status of the Bukharian Jewish communities?
So the status was always up and down like in any other communities. Okay, there's anti-Semit. We are on a peak. There's anti-Semitism. Everything goes down. Then again, the new Shah or the new king or the new emir appears, or the new president, and things becomes better. So before Tsar's Russia, that period was a devastating period for the Bukharian Jewish community, because at that time we had 21 Omar laws, discriminatory Omar laws, which were we were not allowed to ride a horse, just a donkey, so not to appear taller than a Muslim fellow. We were not allowed to rebuild synagogues or build synagogues. That's why my comment when I mentioned, oh, the relationship is good, we are building synagogue right now. That kind of the trauma that I'm telling you about it, that we were not even allowed to do it. You couldn't build a house taller than a mosque. You couldn't hire Muslim workers. You couldn't marry a Muslim woman. There's so many restrictions that we had. We actually couldn't wear a belt, had to have a rope, had to have a clothing of specific color that would be identified, and had to live in machala, or live in segregated area like a ghetto, that we were not allowed to be seen in the main city. So we had all of those 21 restrictory laws. We couldn't
What
own
years was
that.
that? Would you say? What years was
That's the late 17th century. So it's and then closer into the Tsar's Russia. So I would say 1860s is when we start moving into that direction. So and then it evolved back when the Tsar's Russia came in and conquered Central Asia. The Jewish community, it actually was part of my slide here. Let's see over here. Let me show you. So right over here. So it was a Bukharian emirate. So 1873, 1868. Um, so this is the period, and then the Tsar's Russia conquers Khiva. So there used to be three kingdoms: Kingdom of Kakan, Kingdom of Bukhara, and Kingdom of Khiva. So when the Tsar's Russia conquers this land, gets all of this, and they creating a merchant class, a huge merchant class, and the Bukharian Jews now all of a sudden would be able to become free. They'd be able to own land. They'd be able to travel anywhere they want within the Russian borders and be able to be a merchant. And the huge merchant class arises. Now they have equality. Look, they start building beautiful houses. You see, this is a huge house that it was confiscated by the Soviet Union, and then they made a factory out of it. Now it's back. People are buying back. Look, this is inside the house, how it looked like. But that all happened during the Tsar's Russia. Tsar's Russia period, people are considering it as a golden age. But simultaneously with Ashkenazi Jews, they were in peril of settlement. They were not allowed to be seen in the main cities. They were not allowed to be traveling as freely as Bukharian Jews would be able to do. And that was like a very interesting moment where a lot of Ashkenazi Jews tried to immigrate or migrate to the Bukharian Emirate, to the Central Asia, and try to obtain the status of indigenous Jews, which there was the status of Bukharian Jews at that time. So that was a big split between that.
Um,
Any customs
just
in
a
synagogue
few,
prayer? Yeah, go
we have
ahead.
just a few minutes left. Let's yeah, let's keep going. But
I
what
want to go with this one. After some Jews were forcefully converted to Islam, have any of these families reconnected to the Jewish roots? Yes, that happened during the Tsar's Russia. When Tsar's Russia came in, everybody, we had like Moranos, right? Or like Chalag group of people who converted publicly but internally kept Judaism. When Tsar's Russia comes in, they all right away went back to the Jewish community and got reconnected, received the last names, and then during the Soviet Union, it just continued on. So yeah, so we don't have such a big separation between those who converted and stayed and those who actually like never came back. But most of the people, majority of people came back.
do you have in you mentioned this before, but what is the assimilation rate now? What is the intermarriage rate in Bukharian Jewish community in Queens, for example? Uh, I know like the Syrian community in Brooklyn is pretty tight, and they very much like to see people marry within the Syrian community, same as the Bukharian community in Queens.
Yeah, so the rate is I love the question. Who did the Bukharian Jews vote for mayor? Can I get a copy of these questions? I love them, and
Yes,
hopefully we
yeah,
could answer them um, the for the part two.
yeah.
Um, so the again, it's very interesting. If people marry young, they marry Bukharian. If people marry a little bit older, depends where they are. They marry Jewish, just might not be Bukharian, and some actually marry Bukharian. So I would say the rate is not as high intermarriage, but there are groups of people who marry outside of a Jewish community completely, and they're there. They're small. They exist, and they're also trying to figure out their way out, the way in, because they still want to stay in the Jewish community. They don't want to just completely go. They still have to still figuring it out. What is that going to look like to them? Um, and yeah, and we the only way for us to preserve is to marry within ourselves and kind of stay within ourselves. So that's the that's the kind of like the idea for it.
Yeah. So many questions. Are there some other things you'd like to leave us with before we wrap up for today? And I'll
Yes,
send you these
yes.
questions so that you can people can be in touch with you.
Yes, so the way to be, so we have these tours, like I said, in person. So if you're interested, definitely go to our website. We also have a trip to Uzbekistan, and to be in touch with us. This kosher Silk Road doesn't exist page anymore, but you could definitely go to my Instagram, Menashe underscore. Um, and also you could stay in touch by having my email, menashe@samiglobal.org. Go to my Instagram for our college campus program or my personal Instagram that I encourage you to go and follow, and you'll be able to get 1 minute video about Bukharian Jewish history, about Bukharian Jewish life, and things that we do in the community. And I really appreciate that all of you are logged in during this time and wanted to learn, end of calendar year and be able to still do all of that. So this is a really, really appreciate it and really would love to learn with you next month and actually looking forward. And if we have a few more minutes that you would want to ask some questions, we could do that. I think we have 2 minutes, we did pretty good with time.
Did great. Yeah, lots of interest, really fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. We learned a lot, and obviously there's many, many questions. So who did the Bukharian Jews vote for in the mayoral race?
What do you think?
I don't know, it's a tough one, isn't it?
Tell
Um,
me, Audrey, what do you think? Depending on
I,
everything that I told you.
yeah, I do not think they voted for Mandani.
All right, good. Yes. So the community that comes from a socialist environment, they will not support that type of rhetoric, even if if they're there. So the majority of people did not vote for Hamdani. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so to be continued in a couple of weeks. So thank you, Manesha. Thank you so much. Our next Scholars Circle will feature Manesha again for his second part to this lecture, From Bukhara to Jerusalem, Israel After 10/7 Through a Sephardic Lens, on Tuesday, January 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'll see you then, and I'm sure that people will be asking many questions, and we will send you all these questions as well, so that you'll have that. Um, and anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Now there are some Bukharians on this call. I would like you to connect with me, and I would like to learn more about it. Why did you want to connect? So
Okay.
I see some of the last names. So
Okay. It's great work you're doing, and it's amazing that you've dedicated your life to preserving this. And in our chat before, you said you'd like all of us to reclaim our roots, and uh, that's a great thing. So thank you so much. So we'll see you all next on Tuesday, the 13th, 12 p.m. for what's how 10/7 has impacted the Bukharian
yeah. And if you
community.
want to learn more a little bit about my work, is samiglobal.org. This is our website that we do for college campus work. And you could see some of the stuff that is there, the trips. If you want to learn about the trip, when is the next one, you could look, everything is there, samiglobal.org.
And
And
I assume that you'll accept donations.
yes, 100%. We're actually running a very interesting campaign that if you got excited about the Joma, we're actually raffling off that Joma next week. So if you want to participate in that in that raffle, it's only $10 to get in, and you'll be able to win $600 to $700 Joma. We're also raffling off a trip to Uzbekistan. We're raffling off a Bukharian replica of a Bukharian Kiddush cup. It's a 300-year-old replica of it, pure silver. So with $10, you'll be able to get in. And again, your money is an opportunity for us to continue to work on college campuses, but also you'll be able to win something cool.
And where do they get where do they sign up for that raffle?
The raffle is you go samiglobal.org and you will see a day Hanukkah campaign, and you click on that and you'll be able to go straight into it, and you'll see different days, and you basically choose which one you would want to go for.
Terrific. Okay. We'll see you in 2 weeks.